that moment in an all-age family nativity service where I think to myself, much as Katie and Edward love being here, they don't want to dress up as Mary and Joseph. I can see Jed as a donkey, but... So I'm going to give you the all-age nativity light, and then we'll do a little something else as well later on. You've got to love a good knock-knock joke, haven't you? Well, this year I said goodbye to a friend of mine. Bobby was part of our Tuesday morning group. You might have known Bobby from other places too. Wherever Bobby went, he had a stack of jokes that would have made a Christmas cracker writer blush. They were wonderfully terrible jokes. Did you hear about the Scottish owl? Didn't give a hoot. That sort of thing. Wonderful. I don't remember Bobby doing knock-knock jokes, but I get the impression he would have loved them. But you know how they work, don't you? Knock-knock. Tank. You're very welcome. Knock-knock. Doctor. Yeah, it's on Boxing Day, I think. That you know the sort of thing. Knock, knock. It's a Roman official, and this is where it doesn't get very funny. Because I've come to tell you that you need to go to the place where you were born in order to be registered. It's about taxation and that sort of thing. And it's not going to be funny. Because Mary and Joseph are going to have to journey, and Mary is expecting a child. Knock, knock. It's Mary and Joseph desperately trying to find somewhere to stay. They've made it to Bethlehem, but where on earth can they sleep? And it's not just sleep anymore, because Mary knows she needs somewhere soon. The baby is coming. Oh, for the gift, the generosity, the alternative thinking of that stable place, that manger, that peace. Knock, knock. It's some shepherds. I mean, that's what you want, isn't it? An hour or two after giving birth. You want a group of mucky workmen who've been out in the hills. They're dressed for cold weather. They're here. I mean, some of the stories say they even brought the sheep with them. I mean, this is the last thing you need. Except they tell you of the angels who appeared. The angels who brought them great news. The angels who told them that this baby born in this odd place, away from home with new parents, this baby was going to change everything. Knock, knock. Wise men? Those who follow the advice of the stars, apparently. Those who have journeyed from the east, bringing with them their gifts, bringing with them their hope. That maybe, just maybe, this king born is not just good news for a few, but good news for them all. And they have journeyed following their star, and they find hope where they least expect it. Knock, knock. Jesus. Jesus knocking on the door of our lives, on the life of this church, and saying, will you remember the story? But will you also let me into your story too? Amen. Friends, we're going to sing together perhaps the most wonderful of I don't normally have my phone switched on in front of me. I needed it for a couple of knock-knock jokes in case I forgot them. But I note a message from our friend Helen Williams, who was doing refreshments this morning and has got to the car this morning to find she's got a flat. So in a few moments' time, when we go to have refreshments, the coffee's already made, but I'll be looking for a couple of volunteers to pitch in and help out. Thank you. Yesterday, I was up at Mum's, sorting a few more bits and pieces from her bungalow. As I think most of you know, I lost my mum earlier this year, and we're still at that stage of clearing away treasured possessions, let's call it that, not the accumulated tut of generations. And in the process, my brothers have taken an approach which says anything vaguely religious, and given that my mother and father were lifelong Methodists, my faith was partly because of their faith. They've got plenty of religious stuff, but that's their approach. My brothers sort of, if it's vaguely religious, John will have it, I'm sure. Which is how I come to be the proud possessor of a rather nice reproduction, bit faded with age, of the famous painting by Holman Hunt, Jesus, Light of the World. It's a famous picture. When it was painted, he did 2 or 3 versions of it, actually. I think one hangs at St. Paul's Cathedral these days, one in Keble College, Oxford. But one of the versions did a tour, toured the UK, toured America. I mean, I've heard of rock bands touring. I never knew that paintings could tour. But this picture was much admired. In fact, in Methodist households, and no doubt Baptist too, in places where folk would never have thought of having a picture of Jesus, this became the picture of Jesus everybody wanted to have. You know the picture, even if you can't see this small version from the back. It's a picture of Jesus in an unlikely white night robe with gold lame cloak. I don't know what they're suggesting with the sartorial decisions, except that this is King Jesus, crowned. And Jesus is knocking on a door. Famously, it's a door that doesn't have a door handle on the outside. It would suggest it can only be opened from the inside. It's a door that looks overgrown with ivy. And Jesus illuminates the scene with the lantern he is carrying. Jesus knocks on the door. Behold, I knock. It's taken from Revelation chapter 3, verse 20. That promise that to the church in Laodicea, that if only they would open the door to Jesus, Jesus would come in and bring his light to bear. There is a Christmas truth in this old painting. But it will not surprise you to hear that William Holman Hunt painted more pictures than just the one that everyone knows. As a young man, I used to love going to the galleries in Manchester, mostly because they were free. And so if I was up in Manchester spending my hard-earned cash on whatever the latest status quo single might be, and having a dodgy hot dog for lunch because it was cheap, where else might we go in the rain? we would go and find a gallery and look at the pictures. I remember being very impressed in one of the galleries by a huge canvas of chariot racing. Think Ben-Hur. It's an amazing picture of Roman chariots. Very impressed. But I also remember coming across another picture by Holman Hunt. It's one that I've put my version of up on the wall in church here for a while. It's new. If you've not had a chance to look at it, come and peer more closely. It's a famous picture by him called The Shadow of Death. It's a picture of Jesus in the carpenter's workshop after a hard day's labor. And he's stretching out those muscles that have been working. I don't get much use to my muscles except for chipping away the ice this week. He's stretching tired muscles, and his mother, the bottom left-hand corner of the picture, is peering up and realizing that as he stretches, there is a shadow forming on the tool rack behind. And it's as if in the shadow you have a picture of a man hanging on a cross. The Shadow of Death is the name of the picture. But if you look very closely, you'll see that what she's actually rummaging in, the reason that Mary is out in the workshop, is that there is an old chest in the bottom left-hand corner. And in that old chest, whatever she's rummaging for, you can very clearly see the gifts of the wise men. This is a painting where the artist wants us to notice that the story of Christmas and the story of Jesus dying for us on the cross are two parts of one and the same story. And each Christmas, we need to remind ourselves that this Jesus born to be light of the world is a Jesus born not simply to die, but to have his life taken from him in violence and anger and hatred, because he challenges violence and anger and hatred with love and joy and peace. And the world struggles to hear that message. And so as we celebrate, we also remember Jesus, light of the world. Jesus, the light that stepped down into darkness, that we might see. Knock, knock. Jesus. It's Christmas. It's Good Friday. And it is Easter Sunday too. For what comes into the world in him is hope. Amen. Let's take a few moments to be quiet, and then I'm going to lead us in some prayers.